While some of our students are coming up, I wanted to take a minute to say, while some of our students are coming up, I wanted to take a minute to say a big, huge, giant thank you for some adults from our congregation who volunteered their time and patience this summer by chaperoning our youth mission trip. That is, it's a big deal. And so I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Mike Grammer, Gina Williams, and Miss Donna Perkins, and then Brian Tramontaine, who has been my right hand and assistant. And I have to say, there's a big source of pride when you see somebody who's graduated from your group come back and help and really help. So, all right, guys. The very first mission trip that I took a group of FCCers was an incredible experience. They truly bonded and they learned to love one another in the middle of serving others. They surprised themselves and they grew because of it. I realized I would have to be careful not to place a set of expectations on this year's trip with a lot of new young faces. That doing that would not allow for the experience as it was, and could even possibly shut down many of this group's different and varying gifts. So for myself, I made an intentional decision to set goals, because I can't not, but not to place specific expectations on what I thought that this experience should be for them. But in that ironic, interesting way that the Spirit works, this mission trip became just that, a wonderful bonding experience for the group as a whole, where they learned greater tolerance for one another and saw themselves more as a family as they had shared goals of serving others. So our students went to a base camp in Wilmore, Kentucky, where the staff of Adventure served. They provided service opportunities paired with devotion time and worship that focused on the topic of compassion. So this morning, our youth are going to share with you what they learned and ways they have been able to show compassion through service. So from our scripture and all of our time here in church together, we all know the story of the Good Samaritan. The question we want to ask ourselves each time we hear that story, as we heard it today, is, would I have passed by, or would I have stopped to help that man? Because the Samaritan who did stop shows us elements of compassion. We learned that compassion is a choice. In our scripture this morning, we were encouraged to clothe ourselves with compassion. This is demonstrated not by the passing of the priest and Levite, but by the Samaritan who made a choice to stop.
I wasn't sure I wanted to be away from home, but I went.
Joey made a choice.
Who would have expected the Samaritan to stop? You'd think he would have been the one to pass by, considering the hatred that existed between Jews and Samaritans. What would cause this Samaritan to stop and help this man? Clearly, the Samaritan saw this man not with his own eyes and experiences, but with God's eyes. He was moved with compassion. His help was an expression of God's love.
So compassion requires us to see with God's eyes. It's an expression of God's love. Compassion is recognizing a need and then doing something about it.
For our first mission trip, we went to God's Pantry. We were able to help a group that provides food for the hungry. We inspected, donated bread for mold, and then we built crates to stack the bread in so it would be delivered to food banks all over the area. We did so many that there were mountains of them.
Large, we have pictures. But compassion is costly. In the Samaritan's act of compassion, we see personal sacrifice and personal vulnerability, meaning he put himself at risk to care for the other. He sacrificed not only his money and personal items, but he helped care for him himself.
We spent one afternoon in downtown Lexington charged with finding ways to deliver random acts of grace and service, or RAGs.
I bought a glass of lemonade for a homeless man who was hot and sitting outside. He was talking to himself, and he seemed really glad to have the cool lemonade.
That's not an easy thing to do, and Lindsay did that. Okay. We learned that compassion doesn't mean feeling sorry for someone. It means suffering with. We don't want to just think compassionately. We want to live compassionately.
We were on our way to a RADS mission when Tino saw a little boy who dropped his ball. He started crying, so Tino ran and picked it up.
Brian left out that it was in the middle of the street, which was an anxious moment for me, but what was so beautiful about that was that we were on our way to a mission site where we were going to do missions, but Keno did missions on the spot in the way he saw the need, and he did that. Compassion is the absence of comparing ourselves to others, competing and judging. Compassion isn't doing nice things for others so we can set ourselves above them, high in our own accomplishments.
Our last mission project was to help at the E7 Kids Cafe. This was a summer program for kids who don't have a good place to go during the summer. It was in the basement of a church that is too bad in shape to be used, and there was no air conditioning at all. We played with the kids, served them lunch, helped them with crafts, cleaned and mopped their space, and took them to the park, where it poured down rain. We wanted to help them, but not act like we were better than them or doing them a favor. We just wanted to show God's love by being kind.
In youth group, we learned that we can be compassionate individually and we can work together as a unit. We challenge you to live compassionately.